to welcome everyone to today's event. We have speakers to talk about their life experience and want to thank each of them for joining us today. We hope that you're enjoying the refreshments provided by the GCSA. We welcome you to stay afterwards for a bit of refreshments and a little Q&A if the speakers are comfortable in doing so. I'd like to start with identifying the difference between cisgender and transgender. There's often controversy surrounding these terms. The term comes from chemistry, cis meaning the same and trans meaning opposite. The Transgender Day of Remembrance is about honoring the over 3,000 individuals who have been taken far too soon and the legacy that they have left behind. It is to bring awareness about the violence, discrimination, and harassment that trans individuals have had to endure. November 20th is a day to understand that trans individuals face a level of violence that you and I might not understand, and they might end up paying the ultimate price simply because they need, as we all do, to live authentically. There are young people who are starting to realize who they are as people and might find they are trans or gender diverse. Imagine what it would be like for those individuals to know that by living as they truly are, rather than by their birth assigned gender, they could be very well putting their lives on the line one day. Imagine for a moment being so violently hated simply for your gender identity to the point where someone might want to harm you or even kill you. Take a moment and reflect on that. Someone you don't even know wanting you harmed or dead because you live your life authentically as the gender you identify with. For the cisgender audience, those who identify as the sex they were born with, that would mean simply going about your day as normal and someone killing you because you identify as male or female. I now call upon Drew from the GCSA to continue to speak upon this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. As student government and as college, we cannot no longer ignore the issue and pretend that the violence and discrimination against trans individuals isn't as serious as some might believe. It's very real and it needs to be fixed and end. The fact that there continues to be so many transgender and gender diverse individuals killed annually is a significant tragedy that goes beyond the two-spirit LGBTQAI+ community. It's crucial now that we step forward on the Transgender Day of Remembrance and ensure that we all work together to end the violence against trans and gender diverse people. I now pass on the microphone to our first speaker, and thank you.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes? Okay, cool. My name is Parker Buchanan. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a non-binary femme artist. I'm really passionate about community care and queer liberation. I'm also terrified. I don't public speak, so just bear with me if I nervously fumble over everything that I'm about to say. So I would like to start us off with a quote from a poem by Lee McCovey, and it goes as, "No one ever thinks of us as human because we are more ghost than flesh, because people fear that my gender expression is a trick, that it exists to be perverse, that it ensnares them without their consent, that my body is a feast for their eyes, hands, and once they have fed off my queer, they'll regurgitate the parts that they did not like, they'll put me back into the closet and hang me with all the other skeletons." And as a non-binary femme, I experience transphobia and misogyny all rolled pristinely into one little ball. It comes from cis customers blatantly misgendering me while I toil over their lattes wearing my they, them, and theirs pronoun pin proudly on my apron. It comes from my queer friends quietly wondering with prying questions about how I can wear false lashes, have a vagina, and then have the audacity to call myself non-binary. It comes from my doctor's painfully conservative view on my transness, and it even comes from within. While I stand in my bathroom mirror with my partner's haircutting scissors, considering a short, androgynous haircut for the 100th time this week. Being femme is a weapon. It is a brash political gesture to reclaim my femininity in the face of the oppositional cis-het male-dominant world. It is a softness and a hardness together. It is elegance and violence. Femininity is a weapon. Remember that. Femininity is a weapon. In 2017, 96% of the trans people who were killed in the United States were women and femmes. This already large number doesn't account for the women and femmes who were and still are subject to violence through poverty, lack of and denied resources, police brutality, domestic abuse, suicide, and then a communal infrastructure designed to fail us. While unpacking systemic misogyny and toxic masculinity is another conversation, deconstructing it is something we can practice every day within our own communities. The revolution starts at home. Part of the fight will be liberating ourselves from the definitions of masculinity and femininity and creating our own, challenging each other to do the work. The rest of it will be holding our cis allies and accomplices accountable to do their side of the work. It will be harboring community wellness and solidarity to make police presence obsolete and working to fix the broken healthcare system. It will be harm reduction on a mass scale. The labor activist Mary Harris Jones once said, "Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living." Your transness is a weapon. Your queerness is a weapon. Today, we pray for the dead. Tomorrow, I expect all of you, and especially my femmes in the crowd, to fight like hell for the living. Thank you.
Hey, can everyone hear me? Great, I am notoriously very quiet. I am also going to be reading from my phone because I admit that I'm incredibly anxious about public speaking as well. So Kway, good morning. My name is Keegan Hobson. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm honored to be here today. I've been lucky enough to speak at Georgian College a few times, but never as an alumni of the college. I graduated from the Indigenous Social and Community Development Program in 2017, and since have gone on to study social work at Ryerson University in Toronto. This day is incredibly important to me as a trans person and as a survivor of transphobic-rooted violence. I am forever impressed by the capacity the trans community has to find and carve out space for ourselves, to build families and communities often from scratch. This makes it all the harder when we lose a family member, even one whose voice and laughter we've never known. We share this sacred bond through this process of othering that occurs in dominant society, and there's heartbreak behind every name they read and often mispronounce off a list on this day every year. Days like today are so important to our community, and thank you to Georgian College, Georgian Pride, and the GCSA for facilitating a time where queer and trans community, as well as our allies, can gather to share space. But days like today can also be really frustrating for a lot of us. There's outrage in our community about the lack of action that often follows these organizational demonstrations of grief. Our community is so incredibly resilient. This is a fact of our existence, but we cannot do this work alone. This labor cannot continue to fall on our backs, and we need the support of our cisgender allies if we're going to get through this alive. I stand here in the hopes that one day I won't have to, that one day there will not be a list of 331 individuals who lost their lives to hateful ignorance. 331 people. This number disproportionately represents Black, Brown, and Indigenous bodies who were specifically targeted. This number only represents the ones that were reported, the ones who were lucky enough to be correctly named and gendered in the media. And I mean it when I say lucky. There is a privilege to the newspaper printing our correct names. This is how deep the well of transphobia runs. It is not just individual transphobia that we must combat. It's the systemic and the institutional. Closing out, I know that this speech might have been heavy, and I apologize if this was triggering or really sensitive for anyone in the room. I'm happy to hold space with you and support you should the need be there, and please feel free to approach me when the speakers are through. I want to leave you with this. Many of us are left wondering why people only seem to show up for us when we're dead or dying. Please start giving us roses while we're alive.
Wena Bojon into a Makana Dope, run around is the cause, Wabaji Shindo down, Ganawa Gaming Watson, County Donjaba, and Danish Manadope. My name's Brandon, I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a two-spirit queer person. Today, we grieve and honor those that we lost, those who've been killed in our communities, and those who continue to face hostility in a transphobic world. There's thousands of names, not just hundreds, thousands of names that have been reported over the last decade. And there's countless more that have been left unreported. Today we stand or sit in solidarity in the face of this continued persecution of trans and gender diverse people. The Trans Murder Monitoring Project, which is where we get these names from, researches these names every year. And there's something to be of note. The transphobic violence against trans and gender diverse people frequently overlaps with other axes of oppression. They're all prevalent in society, and we know them every day: racism, sexism, xenophobia, and anti-sex worker sentiment and discrimination. In many cases, classism and colonialism are also present, and we see that represented in the numbers being reported in countries that are facing colonialism and the grasp of what I would classify as American exceptionalism. We can't forget that in many cases, transphobic violence is linked with other forms of power and oppression. If we begin to understand the roots of why this happens, that's how we can combat it. But today is more than numbers in a report, or on a page, or in a newspaper. I know that the thoughts of today can be really heavy, especially for trans folks. And I think it's important that you reach out to trans and gender diverse people in your lives, in your workplace, and in your community. But not just today, every day. I walk the streets every day with a lack of security and safety, and although I present as a masculine person, I don't identify as such. And so I walk with the nervousness that someone might misgender me. And I walk with this nervousness even in spaces where pride is held. So we have to combat transphobia, not only in our own community, but we have to combat it every day outside of our community. And it's just too much. But like I said, we have to go beyond this one day. It's not enough to have this day every year where we cry and we mourn. It has to be an everyday action. It's not enough to simply say no, as Naomi Klein would put it. It's not enough to just not be transphobic. We have to be anti-transphobic. We have to fight transphobia in the workplace, at home, and in the community every day. We have to fight for policy changes and social change and institutional change. Today you'll see many political leaders who will tweet acknowledging this day, but what are they actually doing to change the way that our society functions? The best way we can honor those names, both reported and unreported, is with action. We must never forget the names of those we lost and have been taken from this world too soon. Their spirit lives on in our struggle for liberation. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. That concludes the ceremony. There are some refreshments still on the side if you'd like to stay a few minutes and enjoy. Everybody would look out the window here. You'll see that the trans flag is being raised as a symbol to commemorate this event today.